We're going to start right away, so we're just making a few notes and we'll start. Okay. Tell me when you're ready. Good to go? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll call the meeting to order at 4:03. Good afternoon and welcome to the May 1st, 2025 Audit and Finance Committee. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nations. The city of Regina owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous people whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory as settlers from around the world continue to welcome here and call Regina home. Some members of the community and city administration may be attending today's meeting through video conferencing. I would like to remind those individuals of the following. Please ensure your video cameras and microphones are off. If a member of the committee wishes to speak, use the raise hand function and place into the speaker's queue. When speaking, remember to unmute your microphone and enable your video camera. All notes will be conducted through a recorded vote. The deadline to register as a delegation for the recommendation for consideration for or by council at this meeting is scheduled for May 7th, 12 p.m. on Monday, May 5th. As a friendly reminder, no. Okay. Oh, okay, go right to the purpose. Thank you. Okay. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda at the call of the chair? Councillor Teclis? Any opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. Can I have someone move to a motion to adopt the minutes of the public meeting held March 27th, 2025? Councillor Ing, or Jamie Ing? Mr. Ing? Any errors and omissions? Okay. Any opposed? Carried. Administration reports. We will now consider item AFC 25-2 2024 preliminary year-end report. Can I ask the CFO, Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson, to introduce the report, please?
Thank you. Yes, and through the chair. We are here today to present the preliminary year-end 2024 unaudited financial results for the General Operating Fund and the Utility Operating Fund. This report is prepared on the cash basis of accounting consistent with the 2024 approved budget. The General Operating Fund reflects a deficit while the Utility Operating Fund reflects a surplus. These amounts are transferred to their respective reserves, i.e. the General Fund Reserve and the General Utility Reserve, in accordance with Sections 9 and 10 of Schedule A of Bylaw 2003-69, being the Regina Administration Bylaw. Overall, so you guys have received the report, and so we'll kick off conversation. I just thought I'd start off with just my overall thoughts. Obviously, you've been here for 4 months now officially, so that's exciting for me. Overall, very successful year. So some complexities that happened mid-year. So council had changed the way we allocate over budget in investment income, and we were required to then split it between the Asset Revitalization Reserve and the General Revenue Fund. So that actually increased our expenses from a cash basis by just under $17 million. Without that increase in expenses, we would have had a $6 million surplus. So if we go back to the rules that we were operating under when we set the budget, our surplus would have been $6 million. Given the increase in expenses by transferring that money out to those reserves, we end up with a $10 million deficit. Now that $10 million deficit has to get put to the general revenue fund, but again, $8 million of the 17 was moved into the general revenue fund as well as $8 million into the asset revitalization reserve. So that's where I'm focusing on is, okay, where did we end up at the end of the year with our reserves? So again, we're about an $800 to $900 million company when we're looking at utilities and operating fund. And, as a surplus of 6 million, we were over roughly 1%. When we move stuff out of reserves and look at the operating deficit that it ended up at, it's about 1.8%. So a very small margin of difference compared to what we originally budgeted for the year. Obviously, lots of ins and outs as things changed during the year and things got approved and changed at council. But overall, a very stable picture. So for me, and just to make you aware, I know we have a briefing note coming. We're in the middle of our S&P review, so Standards & Poor's. And it was a very good news story from us. We're a AAA rated city. We're one of very few. And our stability is really a selling point for us. We have very little movement year over year. For me personally, compared to corporate life, very stable in terms of our overall performance as a city. And so really enjoyed having that conversation with Standards & Poor's. The complexities of us with reserves, new to me. I'm trying to get a handle on it. My one maybe concern at that level, sort of at the end of the year, is that if we move, so we're recommending moving that 8 million that we put into the asset revitalization fund back into the general fund. After that move, we'll be at about $20 million in the fund, which is about 10% shy of what we want our minimum target to be. So I think, I would like us to focus on that and go, okay, what can we come up with of ways to make that fund a little bit more stable going forward? And we can work that into our budget for next year to make sure that we're in a good spot. In terms of the asset revitalization reserve itself, even after the move, we're well above the minimum target. So we felt comfortable taking and moving that money back into the general, I'm going to get the names wrong, I'm still learning, but the general fund reserve. So yeah, from that perspective, with the move, we're at 20 million. I'd probably feel more comfortable if we were up around 24, 25. So if we can figure out a process through the year here to kind of get us back into that position. So if we do have a very unfortunate year, that's why that reserve is there. If we have some sort of major event in the city where the city needs to put forward some money into disaster recovery or something like that, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable if we could get there for sure. In terms of overall operating, again, we can go through, there's lots of ins and outs. Most of the majority of the variances were due to big things discussed at council last year. So I know we have a lot of new councillors like me. So big payments around for REAL and EDR for CEWS, to REAL for their cash flow difficulties that they were having. So those are big movements in the fund. Big payment that was made to, $2 million payment that was made to the Globe Theatre to help with their finalizing the steps for their renovation, and those types of things. So there was nothing really there. You'll see in some of we've sort of grossed up everything because of that, because it comes in as a revenue. So just to let you know, on a cash basis, so this is the cash basis of accounting, because we do it two different ways. And in a few weeks, you'll see our audited statements. But from a cash basis, it grossed everything up. So you'll see we are kind of well above budget on revenue and expenses. And it's because of these things where we have to recognize it as revenue and as an expense as we kind of move the money in and out of funds and into our partners like REAL. So hopefully that makes sense. You guys can ask me about the details of that as well. We can walk through it. But overall, a very good year. Like I said, if we go back to the budget methodology, a surplus of roughly 1%. We had very good news in the utility fund with a surplus there. The nice thing about the utility fund is we actually bought less water than we budgeted, but sold more. So The reason is with between the combination of improving our meters at the homes. So our old meters had come to end of life and weren't properly registering leaks. So if you had a slow leak, we weren't getting that. So that was just lost revenue to the city. So now with our improved meters, and we're at 95%, I think, somewhere in there, we're starting to catch those leaks at the homeowners. Two things is happening. Number one, we're not eating the cost. So the city was eating the cost if it wasn't being registered. Number two, we're saving water because homeowners are getting notified of it and fixing those leaks on a more timely basis. And the other way that we're doing that is we've had less water main breaks. So our progress on the 25-year utility capital plan of relining pipes and replacing old pipes is helping us. We didn't lose as much money as we had planned on water main breaks, etc. So a good news story in the utility bucket. Everything else was kind of on budget. So that's sort of my big picture at the top of the city. With that, I'll open it up to questions and we can have a good conversation about where we're at.
Councillor, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair.
Well, hang on a second. Okay, can we have someone move the report? Okay, Councillor, please.
Ready?
Good. Open her up for
Good.
questions.
Thank you for that. That is, relatively good news. I just want to try and understand the 50% piece because, I'm about as new as you are. So, and this was decided on pretty recently in July of last year. Why did council do that?
So, I was going to say maybe we can get Councillor Mancinelli to just.
Thank you very much. So investment income in my time at council had always come after the previous year's budget and just before the next year's budget. It wasn't something that was really shared on when it was arriving, and oftentimes it would mysteriously nip off the mill rate a little bit just as we started debates. I didn't think that was a very transparent way of revealing income received through the city. Being a new councillor, I didn't really know how to put it in context. Do you want me to speak up?
A little bit.
Okay. Let me get closer to that mic.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem. By the time we had hit the point for this motion right here, we were having a little bit of a transparency problem. We had just had a budget with a $3 million pathway recommendation coming out of the General Reserve Fund.
Yeah.
And we had just redone the investment policy and made it more efficient. Because the transparency problem, as well as not understanding the variances taken on by administration and some of the spends, we wanted to properly stack the reserves with the investment income and a little bit of a stopgap measure to make sure transparency was being established and that all of the well-intentioned funds from the residents' investments was going properly to a savings account before being earmarked to cover off a variance or an overrun without that being brought to council's attention.
So I'm just curious, now that we have our very own CFO, does it make sense to give him that authority to decide what percent goes where?
I think till we establish some of the goals of this committee, to have that, the variance, the quarterly reporting, open dialogue and transparency back and forth, it might be good just to keep on moving this way. There's a stopgap measure in that we can transfer the money at his recommendation and get things back in check, but it causes a conversation first to make sure we always maintain transparency.
Okay.
I think that transparency will be achieved through what we're trying to do in this very committee, and I think that that's probably should be the goal, and a smart change as we obtain that would be probably really efficient for these guys to do their job and a smart thing to do.
Okay, I think I understand that.
I think I did explain that okay for you guys too. And if you guys don't agree with any of the opinions I gave or anything of the meetings, please correct me. Like that's my, I'm polarized, right? You guys had to go through a whole different experience, and I put you guys through a lot. So if you see it differently and there's a different aspect, correct me. I'm really, please do.
Thank you, through the chair. Sorry, I turn it off when someone else is talking, I get an echo. Yeah, and just to follow up, I completely agree with you, Councillor Mancinelli. I thought it was a good idea when it was done last year, right? The idea was if we had extra money, we wanted to replenish those two funds, right? So same issue that I talked about to open this was that we got to be cognizant of those two funds specifically. They're kind of our backstop, I'll call it, to our capital and our operating operations. So not a bad idea. It's just I have to make sure I explain it when we get there. And you know, I think, so two things have happened, and we're going to have the investment report as well that's coming. So we've greatly increased our investment income the last few years. So I think the budget was a little bit lower. We've increased that budget, seeing that we've had better performance and what we're sort of thinking we're going to hold in investments through the year. But, all right, lots of unknowns with investments, right? That the markets are unstable right now. And so I don't know where we'll end up at the end of this fiscal year. But this idea, I think, makes sense, that if we end up with extra money, we want to make sure we're saving it for a rainy day, essentially.
I guess too, when this comes to council, just a point to come across so we don't make our new CFO look unnecessarily efficient is, yeah, this is a new reporting mechanism. To have that variance larger than the year before because of that change, we should probably explain that out a little bit. Yeah. Because I think the year before we were at 0.4 variance compared to 1.8 or something, if I remember. And that's that budget shift that we did because they were able just to, you know, incorporate that into budget, and that's where that missing 1.2% is basically. Okay. So just to, you know, explain that this is a mechanism change, this is an expected piece because of it, and that transfer becomes the transparency would, I think, be on point explanations, and that's your job to explain when you get there. So.
Mr. Ing?
Through the chair. Thank you, Darren, for your great report. I just wanted to ask where that. So you recommended $8 million transfer from the asset revitalization reserve, and it's still within the range of $500,000 to $30 million of its recommended range. Where does it stand right now? And if we do need to replenish the general reserve fund, do you think could it take more of a hit or move, so to speak? Would it be, are we at, yeah, so depending on where we are at the asset revitalization reserve. Thank you.
Yeah, and through the chair, so great question. We're at roughly, I'm going to say 9 to 10 million. If we need the exact number, I think Kim has it. So after the 8, we're going to be down, say, in the $1 to $2 million range in the ARR. So I don't think there's a lot of extra money there to replenish, or we would have recommended that. The reason I feel better too about ARR being down there is we do have capital carry forward. So right, your ARR is like your backstop for your capital projects. And because we front load and pre-fund a lot of our projects, we do have capital carry forward. So we have a little bit more of a cushion on the capital side. Whereas on the operating side, you know, like I said, if we have some sort of major event in the city in terms of a storm or right where we need to spend a significant amount of money, I feel more comfortable building up the general revenue fund.
Thanks very much, Darren. I do have a few questions on just some of the processes around here. Now, we're all new. We all sit around the table. We all come from different industries, and we all have a different, I'm going to say, training on how we address budgets and what we look at for budgeting. So some of the questions that I want to ask, and maybe be more open in dialogue and more communication, and you know, just spark how to set that goalpost further away and kick a better field goal, if you want to call it that, and just become better with their money. So when I look at capital and capital carry forward, some things I do get nervous about, and especially on the capital side of the equation, because we have two buckets here. Essentially, we got the big bucket.
So sorry, we do have a capital report coming, so I don't know if you want to ask the capital stuff at that time, or I'm happy to. I just don't know the procedure, but we do have the capital reports next, I believe.
Oh, for sure. No, and I'm just going to say, it's going to be the same comment, whether wherever they get it
Perfect.
or not. So on the operational side, that's everything that we do to operate our city 24/7, no matter what happens. And that's that snow event, that flood event, that whatever event. That's what that $25 million is for. I personally think that we should maybe look at that number. Historically, where is that number? Where should that be versus putting that into investment? However, if we have that in investment, is that tied up or is it just free cash flow in the bank, right? So what we're talking about is a few different things, kind of the operational, and we're going to the FFO, the funds from operation that we put over to the reserve, and the reserve, as we collect interest, we put it back into the operations, just to keep the city operating. Some of the variances that we're talking about the bottom line variance, which is good. But I want to start looking at that kind of that middle variance, and I think that's a department head issue, looking at that middle variance of where do we have these variances. And this is something that I'm going to say, as the senior executive of the city, have those conversations with the departments, and here's your budget, and manage to within X amount of percent. And I think that's something that we sit as a committee to say, if we're going to put a budget together, can you manage this budget within 97% of your budget, so you have a 3% variance, is the one question. Snow, that's a variance, we understand, huge variance, right? But when I look at legal, there is 32% variance in there. What does that really come from? Right, we can't answer that today. We may be able to, we may be not be able to, but these are stuff that, triggers of the questions, like how do we manage that? On the capital side of the room is the capital carry forward, and it's the processes around that capital carry forward, and you being kind of new here and a lot of people in different chairs, and how do we manage projects? And why are we having capital carry forward? So if we have a project identified for, I'm going to say Dewdney Avenue, it's X amount of millions of dollars. Is it been identified for this year to this year? So we have that capital carry forward. But we also were presented with a list of capital carry forward with no spend and no commit in 2024. What is happening with that capital carry forward, being that those budgets are still out there, there's projects that are still developed, but now we're going on a capital carry forward with no spend, even though we asked for that money 2 or 3 years ago. So we committed the funds, we didn't deploy the funds to do what we said we're gonna do, but when we asked for more money to do more work that we didn't commit to. And that's part of the overall process. I think we really gotta tighten that aspect up, and I think this is a good opportunity for everyone to sit around and discuss how do we tighten that aspect up, or that ask up of that money. And then if you're asking for that money, hold the people of the groups accountable that you're going to do the work, and that also comes into the sign off. Everyone that signs off on that RFE, and I'm not sure if we have that process for the request for expenditure process all the way through, and the people that are signing off to ensure that work is getting done and that money is being spent when we're asking for it to be spent.
Yeah, so great question. So through the chair. So I'll tackle the operating one first. So legal specifically, good example. So in the legal department, we just had more lawsuits than we expected during the year. That's, again, it's a little bit like snow. We don't know what we're going to have in terms of that. What we do, though, to address it is we monitor it, and so we know we went over in 2024. So we've actually put in the budget for 2025 a new lawyer. So because what happens in the law part is we have to outsource it, and outsourcing is much more expensive than in-house. So what we're hoping is that in 2025, if we see the same level of lawsuits, we can cover off that with a FTE that will be much more reasonably priced than having to outsource. Again, this is an estimate when you're talking law. Hard for us to really put a pin in it. I'm a little bit worried this year, just to put that out there, given that we have so many revals and so many appeals, an abnormal amount of appeals. So we'll see what we can do there to try and handle it all in-house, but we might have to go external on the legal side. But just from a process perspective, that's what we do. So when we sat down to do the budget for 2025, we looked at where we had overages, right, and went, okay, how come those overages are happening? And a lot of it, so if you look at the summary, right, our big things that we're over on were transit and roadways. And so we're having a difficult time catching up with inflation. So as a city, we're trying to hold back the costs, but when a bus breaks, a bus breaks. And so our estimate for how much it's going to cost us to repair buses has been light the last few years. Now, we're just not catching up. Like, the materials are much more expensive than they were pre-COVID. And so when we're budgeting, we're trying to estimate, okay, how much is it going to cost? How many heavy-duty mechanics do we need? And what we found is that we're over budget on the materials. So we didn't put enough in for the cost of the materials to repair the buses. We're also having strain in our staff because they were having to work overtime because we had more breakdowns than we had planned for. We started to lose some staff there because we were having issues. Then it starts to roll downhill. Then we have to outsource it to, right? And then the cost is even more. So again, to address that this year, what we try to do is we're hoping to hire 1 or 2 more heavy duty mechanics. That's a tight market, but we're hoping that we can do that. So the kind of, again, if we can increase a lower cost and then absorb some of that outsourcing, we're hoping to. And then again, from a budget perspective, you know, we just have to try and catch up with the cost of these materials now, right? Talking to my colleague in Saskatoon, you know, in a lot of these places, they were seeing 30% increase in the cost of materials for roadways and transit. And so I think we need to do a little bit better job as administration of putting that forward and saying, you know what, the cost of fixing buses is what it is. And so that's what we try and do from a process perspective. In terms of the capital carry forward, so we can, and I learning by looking at lots of other cities. So Calgary and Edmonton actually call it, they've labeled it pay as you go. They have like it almost looks like they have a logo. And essentially we do the same thing. And it's basically to smooth out for our taxpayers and our residents, so we don't have big spikes when we have projects coming. It's to pre-fund stuff. And so then that'll sit in capital carry forward. So what we did, and you'll remember during budget time, council actually approved giving $14 million back of capital carry forward. So we did a process where we went through all of our projects that have capital carry forward and said, okay, which ones are done? And if they're done and they have capital carry forward, that's a no-brainer. It's called returning it to source. So you return it to source, and then we reallocated that for projects for 2025, which lowered the mill rate increase. We do have some projects where it looks like quote unquote nothing happened, but that's either part of the plan, or what'll happen sometimes is we won't get a bid. So maybe we want to do a specific project in the city and we put it to tender and we don't feel comfortable that the bid was in the right spot, right? We're a major city, but we're one of the smaller major cities. And so sometimes we run into capacity issues as a city in terms of people being able to put forward a bid. And so what'll happen is you'll get really high bids on some projects if companies are full, right? So if they get full and then there's an RFP, well, they'll bid, but it might be well above what we expected. So if we have a budget for $1 million project and our lowest bid is $1.5 million, what we'll do as a city is we'll decide, okay, we'll pause it. Now, what we need to do in the capital report, and I know that's new, so is start to come back to you with those, when those things are happening, to communicate it back and say, okay, hey, we were planning on doing project X, Y, or Z. We weren't comfortable with the bids that came in. So what we're gonna do is we leave the money in the capital carry forward because we can't move it. You guys have approved the budget. So the money's not fungible. I can't take that and apply it. We'd have to come back to council if we wanted to do that. But what we'll do is we'll wait a year and we'll say, okay, we'll put it back out to tender next year. Because again, we're a very season dependent city. So, you know, getting to know Curtis, and he's excellent, right? He's dealing with all the stuff in short time periods. Like, okay, the spring's coming. We need to get on the summer programs now because we only have a window. And if things don't come in right, we kind of go like, well, maybe we'll pause on that one because it came in too high. And what I can commit to is that we're going to try and make sure you guys understand that that's happening in real time as well. But we did do a process where we looked through all the projects and said, if there's anything to give back, give it back. And we found the 14 million, which you guys approved, and then that lowered our mill rate increase for the year by 14 million. Now, in total, we have about $200 million of capital carry forward. We put about another 200 million in, and then we end up with 200 at the end of the year. And that's just the churn of us doing projects. So one project will, right, we'll pre-fund it, and then it'll start to come down, and then, you know, like you'll do the water expansion, and then the pool will come on, and then the pool will fall off, but the library will build up, right? And so it's just being sure that we're monitoring and watching it, and we are. But yeah, we're very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to charge people 2 years early for no reason. It's like when we get into the debt report, we'll put a little bit of a mill rate on for 4 years in a row rather than going one big mill rate spike, right? It's just sort of a good practice that I see many cities doing. So hopefully that answered your question. That's sort of the process we do internally. And hopefully at this committee, we can share that on a timely basis. And I think we have quarterly capital reports coming now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And there's some things that I would say an investment in technology, like you mentioned, buses, right? We know these are an asset, and we've talked about the management of the asset, so the enterprise asset management systems, and part of it before is, you know, do we have the systems in place to help the people, the planners, the coordinators, that, you know, I'm going to say everyone down to the mechanics doing the work, all the way to stores and inventory. Like, when's the last time did we do an inventory check to see how much inventory we have that we actually start writing off because we don't use it anymore or never did use it?
Yeah, so, sorry, through the chair. So on an inventory perspective, we have an inventory policy, and we need to do counts every year. So once a year we do a count. We don't do them all at once, obviously. We'll space them out, but we do a count. We do have a lot of different, so from a technology standpoint, we have some older systems on inventory that we have some gremlins in. So we're trying to overcome that with some manual intervention and work between, right, say the fire department and Kim's department to make sure that we're constantly mirroring that up on a monthly basis and writing off inventory. Because, you know, fire department's a good example. They're in the business of putting out fires. But they also need to make sure they're telling us when they're using inventory, right? Because we don't know when you're using inventory. So they have systems in place to record when inventory is being used or not, you know, it's become obsolete and they want to write it off. We have a process to reconcile that on a monthly basis and try and keep up with it so we don't get big spikes. We did have some, and we still do, and I think our external auditors I had a conversation with, we have some long dated inventory outages in our recs that we're taking care of over time. But again, it wouldn't impact what you're talking about in terms of just making sure that we're properly using our inventory, properly managing projects.
Not that the inventory that's sitting on the shelf that has never been used and, you know, is essentially obsolete at this point, but it's still in the books. It's still that asset that's on the book that we write that thing off and we bring that asset value down now, freeing up a cash flow for something else, that aspect.
Well, like writing off old inventory won't free up, and it's an expense, so that won't free up any cash for us unless we were to sell it to somebody. But we try and keep on top of that for sure. And we have inventory in lots of different places, so it is complex for us. We have 2 or 3 systems that track it, and then into our GL. So, and from a software, I'm just going to use this timely. We are looking into new software continually, so there is some project software that Charlene's going to look into with some of our project management staff to make sure that we have the tools in place, like you said, to monitor and be on top of projects as they happen.
Okay, thank you. A few more questions I see coming in. Who's first? Okay. Councilor Mancinelli?
I do have to ask about this. I wasn't going to, but I have to. I can't pass up. The non-vehicle trail system catalyst project, that 2024 budget was an ugly budget going through. I remember the $3 million for the non-vehicle, the catalyst pathway, basically. Easy. I remember us reversing that a couple months later for the Globe Theatre and basically $2 million to go for the steps. What's the pedestrian connectivity and asphalt recapping? Nothing was ever built to that pathway. I was just wondering what that is.
Kim, are you?
I'm sorry, I'll give you a page number here in a second. Maybe I won't if I can't find it. Appendix C, 2024 preliminary year end as of December 31st. General Fund Reserve. Because I remember that being paused because, well, we have to develop the lands anyways. And then the money being redistributed towards getting that Globe Theatre step problem fixed up. But I don't remember any.
Okay, yeah, I'll look at,
Yeah.
do you know what that?
Through the chair, just to clarify, sorry, I should have this just in case. You're talking about the 3 million for the catalyst that we repurposed or reallocated to the Globe Theatre.
Yeah, in 2024 budget, it was a 3 million catalyst pathway. It was supposed to be on the old Taylor Field lands in North Central style, and it got passed in the budget, but then reallocated a month or two later for Globe Theatre steps.
Correct. So we had provided them some additional funding. And so you're questioning additional spend on the asphalt recapping on the
Yeah, just because.
this actual spend. I
Yeah.
think there was actual work beginning at, like, when that decision was made, there was a commitment made to do some of the work. So the rest of the work, I believe, is paused. We may get some clarification on that for you.
Okay.
But my understanding is we were to replenish those funds, find a way to bring that back up to 3 million so that project could continue.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, there's something, yeah.
Yeah, so I believe the work continued with the remaining amount of funds that were on the books.
Well, and if I remember right, they had a plan it yet. There was $300,000 worth of planning that was talked about being carried onward after it, but then I see there's a $700,000 spend, so I wasn't, like I said, just a little bit of clarification would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Ring?
Through the chair, thank you so much, Darren, for the clarification and, you know, how we were able to increase our revenue with the water, with the new meters. On Appendix C, just to build on it, we have a closing balance of 112 million for the general utility reserve with a maximum recommendation of 90 million. Would that reserve be able to absorb any transfer to the general GFR to meet its minimum recommendation?
Yep, thanks. And so through the chair, so that balance is tied to a 25-year utility plan. So we do have a complex model that's set up to replenish our aging infrastructure over 25 years. So it does ebb and flow. You know, it is at a high point right now, but we're forecasting that to come down significantly over the next 5 years. So at this point, we wouldn't feel comfortable transferring it. But we can look into it. I think I'll go back to Curtis and my team and say, okay, you know, what process would we use to do that? There is some complexities between the two systems because they're funded a little bit different between utility and the general fund, but I'll put that back to my team and say, hey, we're concerned at A&F that we don't have enough in the general reserve fund. Can we take $4 million out of here since it looks so high? Is that, sorry, is that what you were sort of inferring?
That's correct.
Okay, so perfect. I'll do that and get back to you.
I think part of the question is, even though you're transferring it from into an operational reserve, do you need it in that operational reserve is really what it comes down to. So if you don't need it in that reserve, you don't need it. Because right now it's topping it up to that maximum, but they haven't been using it. They did have the variance last year, about $10 million, and then it's gone down. But if you don't need it, keep it for the project in the future. There's quite a few more lights on. Councillor, please.
Oh, we can.
It off. Thank you, through your chair. Darren, could you just spend a moment on the ones with the bigger variances in A1 and A2? Like some are pretty high percentage amounts, but not huge dollar amounts, and then some are pretty big dollar amounts.
Yep.
You've explained some of them, but others no. Maybe you can shed some light on those.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, sorry, through the chair. So I'll go to A2. So A1 and A2 are the same numbers.
Yeah.
It's just provided revenues and expenses side by side.
Yeah.
I just feel it to be a little bit better. So if we look at the city solicitor's office, so we had that conversation. It was just more legal action than we expected.
Yep.
And we're hoping to address that. And the Indigenous Relations one is really an internal move of staff. So we have positive variances somewhere else. So we have something specific there, the CHIP for Indigenous Relations. I think we might have had some, because that's housing as well. So I think we had some increased expenses there due to the federal programs that we took advantage of around housing. And you can look that up.
Through the Building Safer Communities program.
Yeah.
There's grant funding that had offsetting expenses. And it was just timing of when we got the revenue versus when the expenses flowed.
So I'll go down to the financial strategy and sustainability line, the 12 million. So that's real. Okay, so that was the payments we made to real in the year. Next line, land and real estate. We just did more land and real estate deals, so it was a good news story. So we had both sides there.
Yep.
Financial services, the 18, the vast majority of that's the over budget on investments. So we were over budget 17 million on investments, and it becomes an expense because we had to move it to the reserves. In terms of technology, the 1.6, so that it was increased, that was basically inflation on our existing software. So we're hoping to get a better estimate of what our software costs are going to be going forward. But, you know, we do get new software over time, but the majority of this would have been a rate variance, not a volume variance. We just under budgeted what it would cost for our technology.
Most of that is US dollar based stuff.
I'm not sure. We did a look. How much of our software is US dollar, Kim? We'll get that. I'll keep moving. In terms of communication and tourism, so tourism was up just because we got more funding. So we ended up getting more funding from Real. So Real, when we moved it over into the city, Real had a reserve there that they hadn't brought over to us. So we got that money and then spent it on tourism items and sponsorships. I'll go down to Parks and Rec. So Parks and Rec, from an expense standpoint, was up 2.2, but then up 4 million on revenue. Yeah. So that was just increased usage of our facilities. So good news story there. More family passes bought, more people going to the pool. And then obviously we have an increased cost with usage. Coming down here into transit. So transit, again, the big net difference there was in terms of maintenance, the majority of it on the buses, which we spoke to. Roads and transportation, the net 4.4 million. The big thing there, again, is a few things, but number one was snow removal. So we had a very busy over average year in terms of in the fall there for snowfall. That put us over about $1.5 million, I believe. And then the rest of it is increased material costs. And then we had some increased costs around safety. Essentially, when people are doing projects, either the city or external people, and having us put out safety cones and sort of road diversions, detour, that kind of stuff. We were over budget there, and we've hoped to address some of that in this year's budget as well. Just we noticed with Project Zero. Sorry, I'm looking at you, Councillor. That's
a safety
Vision
initiative.
Zero.
Mission Zero?
Yeah, so that's
Vision Zero.
Vision Zero. So with Vision Zero, we ended up having more of those types of things for diversion of traffic to make sure that we're reducing the number of accidents. So we're addressing that in this year's budget as well. So yeah, that's all the big variances there.
Thank you. One of the things that the chair had mentioned was we all have different experiences when it comes to budgeting and looking at reports. And one of the things I've always found useful is to have a multi-year comparison when available. So maybe for next year, it might be helpful in order for us to see trends over a course of a running 5 years, let's say. If that's not a lot of work, even more years if needed. I mean, I would love to see up to 10 years. And I'm used to seeing that kind of stuff when I'm in the business world. So yep. If that's possible in the future, that would be really helpful. And if others agree, I would like to see that.
Yeah, we'll look into that and investigate it. I'm not sure what type of resources it would take to pull that together. But and we'll put something together, and I'll come back to you at the next meeting, give you an update.
Thank you.
All good?
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks. Just building on Mr. Ng's question, just given the comment around the general utility reserve, and given the future work required, the rising cost of work, I guess is the $90 million recommended maximum? Is that the right number? Is that something kind of in that look at that, you know, potential? Is that something that maybe we should look at to say, are we in the right pocket there?
Yeah, so through the chair, thank you. Great question. So first, Kim, after we got through the discussion, we can't transfer from utility to general. That's sort of against the rules. I'll leave it there. But in terms of being over, so we are doing a reserve review this year. I think it comes back to council in the fall at some point. So we will be looking at that. We're going to be looking at maxes and minses, overall number of reserves, that type of stuff. Talking, you know, because this was over, we did talk about it as an executive team and as administration, and you know, Curtis just said, it's just timing. Like, we are expecting to actually bring that down significantly, but just due to the way that the projects were timed out, it kind of peaked up at the end of this year.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Mancinelli?
Thank you. I have a comment and a question through administration, building on what Councillor Siklis had just mentioned about the trends comparison. I really agree with him. I think that's, especially for lay people walking in, trying to get your wits about you, it's really important. I think one of the things that this committee should strive to do is first find the right format, which I think this is onto the right format to carry forward for an efficient reporting mechanism that shows well. You know, we can always. But along with that, I know for a trends comparison, from my experience, going backwards would be onerous. There would be a lot to put the secret decoder ring on, especially with all the changes that get made. But to kind of go forward, and with that format, I just wanted to mention that for everyone in the room, to kind of set a goal, say it out loud, and bring administration on that thinking too. I think that feeds into the transparency, and just because sometimes as a councillor we ask for something, and I know administration takes this quite literally, and I'm sure Kim would go through a week's worth of work to make two budgets able to be compared to. I don't know if that's what we expect out of you, right or not at this point, but I think going forward that would be maybe the right way to do it, just to clear up expectations, I guess, if that's okay.
Agree. Councillor Siklis?
Thank you. Yeah, similar to an annual report, you know. Why can't we transfer between the two funds? And the reason I'm asking that is not because I want to be cavalier about it, but we transferred from a transit fund to pay Reels, you know, expense. So
So to be fair, it's, the utility is funded by fees, which are funded through a different mechanism. They're not mill rate funded. So there's a legal opinion. We cannot just take those funds and fund operations. They're fees based. So they have to be utilized for those projects. And we don't have a lawyer here today, so that's all I'm going to say. But
we don't have what?
We don't have a lawyer here today with
Oh.
us, so it's a different funding source, but we're not able to access it in the same way we would with the operating reserves.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can just read from you. I just got a note from Mr. Doney, who's monitoring this conversation.
Oh, super.
And he said user fee funds are dedicated to utility. Just exactly.
I think he's told us that before, now that I'm hearing that. So, yeah.
So,
The one aspect with the user fee funds, and this is the one thing I know about, I'm going to say some of the fundings. For example, the parking lot out here, that is a user fee fund, so you're paying your fees to that parking lot, so your fees are dedicated for that. Same as with the radio, I believe it's called the radio fund. That radio fund, everyone that uses those radios pays into that fund specifically for that project. How it was set up versus funds from operations, the FFO goes into the reserve for capital, and that's based on mill rate versus a specific user fee.
Yeah, I'm remembering that now. Yeah. Thanks, Curtis, wherever you are.
Mr. Anderson?
Sorry, thank you. Apologies through the chair. I just wanted to comment on Councillor Mancinelli's. This is complex. And to make matters more complex, in a few weeks, you're gonna see our audited financial statements, which look completely different from this. So this is a completely different set of books. And so we're gonna have to identify whether we track all this stuff in this format. Because like you said, in an annual report, you typically would, and that you're following your PSAS rules. This is sort of an adjusted cash basis when we do our budget. So we'll look into it, because I would love it too, as a new guy, but I just don't want to comment that we have the resources to do it until I know.
100% agree, like, just that trending, like you see, I'm gonna say, take CP's annual report or a CN annual report, an oil company's annual report, you can see what they've been doing for several years. It took me a lot of effort to go through the 2021 budget to this budget to actually make my own pie chart, and it was painful. Like, it was literally painful.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks. So with the reporting, I guess, just my question would be would you be going back to kind of look at what would that format be to be consistent, so we're not kind of jockeying between multiple formats or rules, or what's kind of your thoughts? Or like, I'm happy for let you guys take it away, but I'm just curious to kind of what your approach would be to kind of make it, to make the least amount of effort to get there, and then we have something that's kind of consistent going forward.
Yeah, so thanks. So through the chair, yeah, we'd be looking at what data is available going back. You know, my understanding is, since Kim's been here for 2 years, like, some of this stuff is really new. So we might have 1 or 2 years of the data in this format and stored, so to be able to do trending. We might have 5, and it sort of will address, okay, here's the long list of everything we're trying to get accomplished. We'll put that on the list. You know, do we want to hire someone quick? Do we have budget for that? All those types of things. I just don't want to commit our resources that I don't know at this time. But yeah, we would look, Mayor, to your point, I'd be looking at all those things.
Okay.
Through the chair, I just want to add that there are some public sector accounting standards that will be changing, that will require us to change our formatting for budget as well. So this might be a consideration for future, but I think that we would have to assess what the impact on that reporting would be.
Yeah, that's fair, for sure. Thank you.
Councilor, please.
Yeah, just a little bit more on this. I think it would be really great at the end of at least our 4-year term to have something to look back to, trend-wise. I know that's not a huge sample size, but I think that would be very helpful. You know, in general discussions with people, you don't have to go into detail with people on things, but, you know, when I have my coffee talks, it would be great to see, well, this has been trending this way, this has been trending that way, and here what we think are the reasons why. I think that really helps people wrap their head around the city and how we're managing it. So when do those rules come in play? This summer? No?
Through 2026.
Ugh. Okay. All right, we'll do our best, I'm sure. All right,
And
thank
I'd
you.
say one
No
more thing to
capacity for
that.
early adoption either.
Pardon?
No capacity for early adoption.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, okay.
One more aspect about, I'm gonna say the trending, the variances that you can swing substantially within the work that we do within here is capital. Where we can cancel projects or we can take on projects. So that water expansion project was a substantial project, and we had to have a $100 million debenture for that project. So that could show a very huge spike. So capital projects, depending on your asset life cycle and where we're at in that asset life cycle, is kind of, I'm gonna say, virtually a false narrative, because we can say we're gonna fix things, but we're not gonna fix things, is really what it comes down to. The operational budget over here, that's where you get the really important data to say, this is my true cost of running my organization in my city. If I wanna pile on all this extra capital work, that's one aspect, but these are my true costs, these are my trends, this is what I'm seeing. Hey, I've had 58 lawsuits in this year because of, I don't know what it is, rocks on the ring road, for an example, or bridges falling apart, I don't know what it is, but then that's also puts that trigger into that data and say, hey, what are we doing, and trigger that capital. So I'm gonna say from my experience, I use that trending information specifically to say, I'm going in the right direction in this area, I'm not going in, or perhaps I need to deploy capital in this area. I'm spending way too much road maintenance dollars over here, where I just need to do a complete road repair or rip up and redo.
While my mic is still on, thank you, through the chair, can you give me some guidance as to where I might ask the following question? Because I'd like to get, Lauren in and out of here. I wanted to talk about capital projects with respect to growth, because we're being inundated by builders who want to help us build this city. I'm talking about homes now, and I can't service them. And the only way to do that is hundreds of millions. So I want to have that discussion. I don't know where that's going to sit. Is it in this group? Is it somewhere else? And is it later today? Just give me some guidance as to where we can bring that topic up, because I think it's critical.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you. So through the chair, yes, I believe so too. I think today's meeting, we're focusing on the 2024 results. We can take that back and see where it's going to come. I'll work with Deb to see, because I know we've been having conversations internally about those plans, so I'll find out when it comes to council or to this room.
Thank you.
Mr. Manselli?
Like from my experience politically and what I took on from my last term when we started to deal with the SMB, the advice given back is we should go for more regular increases to our debt limit, because as we write up master plans and we plan to do things like that water expansion, well, you just spent $500,000 to write a plan up. If you're not going to activate it, you threw $500,000 away.
Right.
We don't have a magical bag of set-aside saved money.
Yeah.
So for every master plan that we have goals in, chances are we're going to have some sort of debt solution to achieve them. So to have a more regular activation of that going forward would smooth some of the uproar that we've had. And as we go through this, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just passing along what I've taken from previous meetings. We're going to see our comparisons to other cities, how we set our goals for our debt, and how they've achieved what they've achieved. And I think that that's just something I want to bring attention to right now. It'll be later in the meeting. Once again, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but those were things passed along that I thought later in the meeting will be more pertinent, and also a piece of that debt piece we'll be talking about. Okay.
Yes.
Like, I'm not the authority, that's my memory, right?
Any more questions about the report? Any more comments about the report? Okay, I will ask the clerk to vote to receive the report. What's that? Oh. Councillor Cleese, do you want to close?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I message loud and clear, Kim, on the resources to make multi-year, pretty-looking reports. And maybe you can give us an idea of what it would cost to put those resources in. That's all I have. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would have to go back and take that away. We have a few different systems upgrades that we're managing as well that should help us get some better timely reporting, in addition to reviewing the standards that we have to comply with. So I can't give you an answer right off the top of my head.
No,
I guess
I
is
wasn't
what
expecting.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I
But we'll
wasn't
take that away.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
Well, we're not talking about Excel in the corner of a desk either, right? Okay, thank you.
No, hopefully not.
Okay. Any other questions? Close? Good? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to ask the clerk to call the vote.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor?
Jamie Ng,
In favor.
Councillor Siklees,
In favor.
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor. Pass that one. Okay, we'll now consider item AFC 25-3 year-end capital expenditure report. Can I have the CFO and Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson please introduce the report?
Thank you, and through the chair. Why we are here. On April 9th, 2024, the Audit and Finance Committee in report AFC 24-12, Capital Project and Reserve Funding, recommended that City Council direct administration to include in its future annual capital projects, drop projects, capital carry forward projects, and status on the percentage of completion of each project. Administration reports on these results on a quarterly basis, and this report is to provide an update on the final 2024 year-end results to City Council. We've submitted the report for your review.
Can I have someone move the report? Councillor, please. Any questions from members of the report? No questions? So, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, just one question around kind of capital governance and prioritization. I know I was told about kind of you guys were working through some work to kind of get that in place to be able to prioritize everything against each other. Just wondering if there was an update on kind of how that was going.
Sure, through the chair. So yeah, you know, I'd say it's still a work in progress. We've done, in my opinion, a really good job of having long-term outlooks of where we want the city to go and where, you know, the major projects that are going to get us there. We've also developed a new area within Deb Ryden's group that's looking at the city from a strategic standpoint to sort of group so that we're not sort of going, well, Curtis is going to do this and Deb's going to do this, so we're not like tearing up a road to replace underneath it and then repairing it 2 years later. And I think that process for me anyways is one that we're going to leverage, right? Is so if we have these North Star city plan type projects that we've agreed to with council, and then we have a department that says, okay, here's the lockstep of how we get these things done, you know, that will be the basis for how we decide which projects happen on a regular basis. Then of course we're always constrained by resources, so we can't do 25 years worth of work in 1 year. Either from a cost perspective or from finding the people to do it. So, you know, I guess that's what I'll say is we're still identifying how to do that. This year, from what I was involved in, you know, we were very cognizant on keeping the mill rate down. And so, you know, we've put forward only projects that we felt were either already going or had been agreed to with council to go ahead in 2025. But again, we're going to rely on those big city plans that we're going to agree to with council and then say, okay, this is how we chip away at it.
Okay, yeah, and I think just updates as things go along would be helpful. And just from my background, just knowing the plan is the one piece, and then I think the other piece that I was eventually hoping to see is to say, how does those, you know, financial resources, risk profiles work into like a score, for example, and then all those plans translate to that list. So yeah, look forward to updates as we go ahead, and that'd be great. Thanks.
Perfect.
Any other questions from anyone? I just do have one on more on the processes around maybe not the right person, maybe it's more the engineering department and determining priorities and the prioritization of the projects to make sure there's, you know, a clearly path defined of the priority of the projects. There's a lot of projects out there. We've got roughly $3 billion worth of assets plus roadways. Part of our initial discussions is sitting around the council, there's, you know, people put up their hand from facilities like we're underfunded, like there's $4 million being spent on 200 and some facilities in this city, which means it's a paint job. So I 100% hear what you're saying of utilization, the people to do the work and the money to fund the work. So I think we really have to really focus and hit the right projects at the right time with the right dollar values. And sometimes that is a bump in capital to spend, so we're not actually spending that, wasting money. Like you said, ripping up a road and a sidewalk to repair a water main to come back and, you know, do the work after that road is paved again. So looking forward to seeing progress down that road. And the other thing I'm gonna say from the 2021 to now, when you account for inflation, the capital that we're actually putting in, sure, it's a big number, but when you account for inflation and that, like you said, the price of parts have gone up, everything is actually, we're fixing less. We're spending more and fixing less. So we have to sit together as a committee, and I'm going to say as a bigger team, everyone in administration, of how do we fix more with less, not less with more. So something for carry away. So that's, you know, invest in that technology to get the predictive models. We need to do that as well too. Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Cleese, do you want to close?
Sure. A bit of a slave driver, aren't you, eh? And I support it. Not the slave part, but just, you know, being tight, as tight as we can. I just want to go back one more time and maybe echo Councillor Mancinelli's comments about looking at a schedule of borrowing over a period of time and trying to work those plans in to say, okay, we've got a bunch of landowners that need serviceable land. In order for us to give people choice in the kind of home they want to own, we've identified that we want to see more building of more homes, to have more selection of homes and more variety of homes. And unless we do that, there is no way we have the money sitting somewhere in a bank account to build serviceable land. We are going to have to use the debenture route, unless there's something else that you know about that I don't, which means that we would have to have a debt ceiling discussion and a debenture discussion every year for the next decade in order to be able to build all that serviceable land. I know where it is. I've seen the dreams of, well, of Dream and others that have this land. So I don't know whether that sits here at Audit and Finance or not, but I think we are the enablers for the developers from an audit and finance perspective. So I would like to see that as a priority at minimum at the next meeting.
Yeah, so through the chair, yes, so we will be discussing that when we get to the debt report. All the things you just mentioned are on for today.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to call the vote.
Jamie Ang,
In favor.
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
Councillor Siklis,
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we will now consider item AFC 25-4 2024 Annual Investment Report. Can I ask the CFO and Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson to introduce the report?
Thank you, and through the chair. The 2024 Annual Investment Report is required by the investment policy within the Regina Administration Bylaw 2023-69. The policy requires that on or before June 30th, an annual report be provided to City Council, which includes the rate of return achieved on the investments, an analysis of investment accounts compared to benchmarks, and any proposed changes to the policy. Today, we have asked and brought our investment managers, TD Greystone, to walk through the committee through the 2024 results, and I'll get our guest here, Lauren, to introduce himself and maybe give a little bio.
This thing just kind of turn on? Oh. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Lauren G., representing TD Greystone Asset Management. We are now known as TD Asset Management. I am but one individual. There are multiple hundreds of individuals around the world that work on your portfolio on a daily basis. I don't think that's an exaggeration. It really is true when we dig into all of the investment teams that are part of the portfolio. Been a proud resident of Regina since 2009. Originally grew up in Saskatoon. Don't hold that against me, but I think if I think back to when we started the process with City of Regina, really our value proposition to the city was, for lack of a better term, chocolate and peanut butter. We were going to be here, local representation, but with global reach and global expertise. And I think we've been able to bring that to the table. Been at Greystone since 2001, managing institutional portfolios similar to this across Western Canada since that time. So we're, and what I will also say before we dig in is thank you. This is really the first opportunity that we have had in a formal setting, other than working with the staff, to say thank you to the City of Regina. This is a significant mandate for our firm. We do manage somewhere in the neighborhood of $450 billion of client assets across the world. But if I think back to late 2020 into 2021, we were in the throes of the pandemic. A lot of people were at home, and when we were awarded this mandate, it was really seen as a feather in our cap. So thank you very much, and we're really proud to serve the City of Regina.
Thank you. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor, please. Any questions from the members on the report? Councillor, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. More of a comparison with others, if that's a possibility. Cities our size, you know, are they doing something different than us and getting different results? And should we be thinking about, you know, diversifying into something that we haven't thought about yet? Things like that.
So I would say in our experiences, the opportunities and the challenges at a portfolio level are incredibly similar across the board, whether it be a municipality, whether it be a defined benefit pension fund, a foundation, or an endowment. We are seeing tremendous volatility in financial markets. There are cash flow requirements. We've seen generational change in interest rates coming down. And so all of those challenges are present here as they are in other cities. As it relates to what other things that other institutions are doing, it gets into the weeds in terms of different asset classes. How do you build out those sorts of things? But it's safe to say we've had some conversations with management about doing some of that work on a go-forward basis to continue to build better diversification, more resilience in the portfolios, and again, that's very similar to what other institutions are doing as well. So I don't see what we're doing here as unique or different or weird. Yeah. It's all in line.
Okay. And then the next question's a bit of a flyer. I don't know if it's happening anywhere in the world. Has any city tried to monetize its assets, borrow against them, create a fund that gives equity to the purchasers of that fund? Are you aware of anything like that?
Not right off the top of my head, but we can certainly take that away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Antonelli?
Thank you. Understand the purpose of this is to diversify and find investment from a broad range. So to put some type of a Spears point on anything would be really dumb. With that, I'm going to attempt to do it anyways. Just looking at the climate right now globally, nationalism, what we have to achieve, is there any investments or attention to Canadian investment, Saskatchewan investment, or local investment amongst these funds? Or is there an opportunity to set a portion aside to try to achieve that?
Broad statement. If an institution looks to direct funds into particular areas locally that is outside of what it is that we would do, it's certainly something that we would welcome and encourage and support, help with to whatever extent it is that we can. To the extent that it would be within our mandate, I don't see that within the confines of our current statement of investment policies. However, within the portfolios, there is significant Saskatchewan representation, thinking about public companies in Canada, thinking about commercial real estate, whether that be here in Regina or in Saskatoon or across the West or nationally for that matter. Different segments of the real estate market, multifamily residential across the country. We see housing affordability as a significant challenge, not only here but across the country. So what is it that we can do to bring more doors in a reasonable, safe manner for Canadians? So all of those things that I've mentioned are being done already. Other specific objectives would be outside of what it is that we would do.
Understood. And like I said, I know it was dumb to put a tip on the spear, but I just had to ask. And I appreciate hearing about the Canadian investments all the same, and some of the things hope to be achieved through the investments. So thank you.
Councilor Cleese?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Quick question on the sinking fund. I guess we won't see anything till next year, but are there restrictions on what investments we can make with that sinking fund? Or is that an admin question? Sorry.
No.
Well. Yeah.
Thank you, and through the chair. So in terms of the sinking fund, right now, essentially, it's a policy that we need to put $1.8 million into the sinking fund every year.
Yeah.
Charlene's busy working with Kim to set up that fund through TD so that we have it so we can put the money in. It has to be in there by September or something like that. We've been working with TD on what we want to do from a policy standpoint. So the sinking fund and how we came up with the $1.8 million has an inferred return on it. And so we want to sit down with our investment manager to go, okay, this is what we expect. So in order to have the money in 30 years, you know, what types of investments should we be putting it in? In the short term, we're just investing it like all of our other investments. So it falls under all of our other investment policies. Again, it's $1.8 million a year here. So we've got some runway where I'm not too concerned. But when we did have our investment committee meeting and they presented, we did talk, and we are actively working with them in determining a strategy specifically for the sinking fund.
Yeah, this is new for us, but not new for you.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Unequivocally not.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the members? I'll ask the clerk to start the vote. Oh,
just one more comment, sorry, through the chair. We do have the report that they presented to our internal investment committee is going to be sent to the members of the committee here after the meeting. I'll put that on me. It was supposed to be sent out before and I had some technical glitches, so I apologize. But you will get to see what they provide us. It's very good stuff. And we'll keep you abreast, of course, when we have our investment committee meetings and they're involved so that we know where we're at on a timely basis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I'll ask the mover to close.
Yes, please close.
Good, thank you.
Go ahead.
Can I ask the clerk to start the vote?
Counselor Siklis,
In favor?
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
Jamie Ing,
In favor?
Counselor Mancinelli,
In favor.
and Counselor Bezo.
In favor.
The motion carries.
Thank you. We do have a scheduled break at 5:30, but it's a good pause point for 15 minutes before we go to the next item. Is everyone okay with that? Is everyone good to be back here for 5:30? Okay, 5:30. Okay, we will now consider item AFC 25-6, purchasing card audit report. Or, sorry. On five? Sorry, annual debt report. Sorry. Yeah, we'll now consider AFC 25-5, 2024 annual debt report. Can I ask CFO and Deputy City Manager Darren Anderson to please introduce the report?
Thank you, and through the chair. The 2024 annual debt report is a requirement of the City of Regina's debt management policy. This report provides details on current and forecasted debt, as well as information on the debt limit and debt management ratios. I submit it for your review.
I have someone move the report. Councillor Scalise. Any questions from the members on the report? No questions? If there are no questions, can I ask the mover to close the debate? Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Mancinelli?
And actually, you were putting your hand up as well. Okay, well, I was just going to say earlier in the meeting, I had kind of mentioned this part of the debt report, and I'd made those comments on tying master plans to increases in SMB recommendation. I guess, like, administration, can comment on that, or?
Yes, so through the chair, thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Yeah, so right now we're in the process of getting we're asking SMB to increase our debt limit as was approved by council. And we are tying it to the specific projects that was put forward with. We do have a forward plan past that as well, based on a lot of the things we've talked about today. You know, getting lift stations to open up new greenfield areas, future projects that council has sort of put on our radar. And so we do have a long-term plan of what we think our debt possibly could be. Charlene and I are working pretty closely on, and you'll see in the report, right, we have a lot of ratios and a lot of limits that we have to try and monitor, okay, how much debt is too much debt and what projects can it go to? So if I only have a limited bucket, right, which projects fit in there and which ones don't, and which ones do we have to come to council to make decisions on? And so, you know, that's, I guess, our general process is, you know, tying our debt capacity to all of the projects that are coming forward. And we're trying to, we take in every meeting, if there's more conversation, stuff gets put on our plate, we kind of add it to the list, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that answers sort of the crux of what you're asking, but.
I believe it does. It shows that we're looking at debt as a tool long-term and not as a political wedge instead, because it is a tool. I guess one other thing I wanted to bring in the conversation, you know, I think a AAA credit rating is excellent. I know it gives us leverage for borrowing, and with all that we have to do, borrowing is very important. And as you plan on behalf of the citizens of Regina, that you maintain that status, and it's very important. I really respect that. Reflecting back on the seriousness of the conversations of my time here, and looking forward to the situations people are predicting and the type of troubles we're looking at and everything else. As you analyze the situation, do you think you can report back to us on the decision on more debt to affect that credit rating and the outcomes? I know that would trigger different interest, rates and things like that. Just a little bit more wholesome discussion when it comes forward. I don't expect that right now or anything, but I know when the decisions come, it's never been included as part of the discussion. It's great to have a goal to try to achieve, but just if we had to modify the goal as well, just to open the discussion a bit more because of the severity of the times.
Yeah, no, and maybe the timing's kind of perfect for this conversation, given that we did just discuss this with S&P last week. So our current rating is AAA with a downward trend. And so the downward trend was on because we were adding debt due to the water network expansion, et cetera. What they shared with us is that, right, they're comparing us worldwide to municipalities worldwide, and they have certain metrics that they measure. They did signal that because we're adding more debt again this year, and we do have a debt plan, that we might trigger back and go to AA, is what they signaled to us. That doesn't mean that it's a for sure thing. You know, when I look at it, we're one of very few cities that has AAA. You know, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg are all AA. And so I'm not, you know, there is an increased cost, you know, in the few basis points. Every basis points matters to us, so we're working our best to make sure they understand our debt capacity. But, you know, we'll come back when they give us final word on where they're at. But I think, you know, when I look at, again, I have a banking background. And so when I look at us, you know, we have $400 million of debt on $3 billion of assets. So that ratio itself is is good. Now we're a municipal organization, so a little bit different than a corporate organization, but it doesn't show that we have an over amount of debt. Compared to other major Western cities, again, we're still very good. And the story that I sort of shared with them is that we have the second lowest property taxes in Western Canada for major cities. So we have wallet share room to grow compared to, because when this comes down, it's about bucketing, right? Where are we versus some of the others, and why are we AAA versus AA? And so I shared that with them, and I think they were cognizant of that, right? To take that into account, that, you know, your capacity to pay for debt depends on where you're at in terms of overall property taxes. So if you're going to add a bunch of debt, but your property tax is already the highest in Western Canada, you know, obviously you want to look at it a little bit different in terms of capacity. The one thing I'll also share with you, you know, the first question they asked us was on the limitation on immigration. So their biggest concern about Regina. So Regina is a very fast growing city, one of the fastest growing in the country, which is good news for us. It's also a very high household income city. So all good news stories. Their first question to us was, are we concerned about the immigration limits being put on by the federal government in stunting that growth? And so, you know, I said our provincial government is still moving forward with trying to bring the right immigration policies so that we're attracting those people. We believe that there's still a lot of people in the world that would love to move here. We are a great city. And so I don't see it as a long-term risk. It could be a little bit of a short-term risk potentially if we limit immigration. But for us, we also have the benefit of bringing people from the rural. So we are growing faster than the province. So over the last 10, 11 years, we've grown at a much higher pace than the rest of the province. So we are seeing still that pull from the rural. So we do have an ability to grow even if our international immigration kind of falls. So those were the big topics that they discussed with us in terms of our overall rating. You know, where we'll end up, I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that we can stay in that AAA rating for sure.
I appreciate the comments. I'm actually amazed looking at the housing problem across the world as a whole, knowing that we have a stable housing supply with a population matching it. You'd think that would be a boon, not a problem in a way. That's all I really had to comment on. Thank you very much for the explanation.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just wanted to learn a little bit more about what SMB is looking for in order to increase our debt limit, and whether or not the CD Howe F grade factors into it. We don't have to prosecute the CD Howe report. We've done that. We've got our media lines out. There's no need to talk about it. Obviously, Standard & Poor's is a much better indicator of, you know, how we do financially, but will they be taking that into account in their decision making?
No, so through the chair, they did not mention that at all.
Okay.
So I wouldn't know. Again, the CD Howe report was more a reflection of how we report on our finances versus our actions. Like CD Howe wasn't commenting on our fiscal capacity or our overall spend. It was more on how are we reporting our information to the public. So yeah, they didn't mention that at all. Again, they commented more on immigration. Sorry. Right, so we also talked about, because we said, well, if just adding debt, we were trying to get a feel for what metrics they use. And so they were saying, well, just adding debt will, might trigger us to go below, and without telling us explicitly. So we had a good conversation around the risk of, well, if you just don't get debt, you can stay AAA, but then your assets fall. And so they actually take that into account as well. And so in their modeling, they say, well, if we don't think that you're investing enough in your infrastructure compared to the cities across the world, that would impact you negatively as well. So it is a balancing act around, replenishing your assets and growing, and your overall debt capacity and limits as an organization.
Well, I hope they take into account the housing situation, because if you ask any real estate agent, there's about 300 desirable homes at best available in the city. Not enough. So we need to be able to borrow in order to build capacity to build homes. So, artificially bouncing us down a couple of A's, is a bit of a money grab, if I'm being honest, because we have the asset that we're growing at the same time and the tax revenue that comes in with it. So I'm not asking to be in the negotiation room with you, but it's something that I would expect that they take into consideration.
Yeah, and through the chair, we're on the same page there, and that's a story that we shared with them. Just to be transparent, EDR was in the room as well, telling the story of our strong economic growth. One thing too that really helps us is our diversification. So a lot of times people think because we're in Saskatchewan, we're very agricultural based or commodity based. When you look at this city, the majority or the biggest section of workers are in insurance, banking, power. We have head offices here of some pretty impressive organizations in SGI, GMS, SAS Blue Cross, FCC, right? And so we got that story out to them to make sure they understood too, because tariffs was a big conversation. So when we're ranked as a low city, as a city with a low impact due to tariffs, it's because we're kind of a mini Bay Street as a city, and those types of products aren't being impacted that much by tariffs. So all of those stories we told, and I think they were very receptive to that. Again, I think it'll come down to metrics, however they, do their math in the background and compare us to other cities. But we definitely put our best foot forward in terms of making sure they understood that we have some good economic advantages compared to other Western Canada cities especially.
Are you confident we'll have a decision within a couple of months?
Is it May? I think they're supposed to get back to us at the end of May, at the end of this month.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Councillor, please?
Thank you.
Just a couple smaller items on the debt and applied debt. We've got emergency shelter for $3 million, but later on in the paragraph, we're describing the emergency shelter as a forgivable loan. Is that just a financial aspect of not writing it off yet as the debt?
So, yeah, good catch. Sorry, through the chair. Good catch, Mr. Chair. That was actually an accounting change from our auditors. So we did stipulate it was based on unaudited financial statements as sort of a catch-all. Essentially, when we recorded that, we recorded it as debt, $3 million worth of debt, which then we applied to our overall debt limit. Our auditors came back and said they would prefer and believe it should be recorded as deferred revenue, in that if we meet our obligations, we don't actually owe that money back, right? So essentially it'll sit on our balance sheet as deferred revenue instead of debt. And so that's the $3 million difference, is that with the accounting change, we will take it off of our debt limit amounts.
Okay, thank you. The one thing I do want to comment, I'm glad, an agency like S&P is coming to the city and looking at, essentially a place to invest money for bonds. My concern is in fact that, we're going for bonds. I understand debt financing, we need to do it. Everyone has a mortgage. Cities need to carry a mortgage for stuff. As Councillor Cleese said, we need to invest that money in the right direction in order to grow the city. Some of my concerns on the growth that we have of the city right now, and talking with these builders, we're building a lot of I'm gonna say from their direct words, for-purpose rentals, knowing full well it's a very transient 50% turnover in those rentals every single year, and the people that are coming to Regina, 50% of them are leaving Regina. And they're leaving for various reasons. So if that's the case, you know what, it's unmanageable if we increase this debt, you know, even though it looks good on paper to have this rating and everything else. If we actually go and ask for that money, it's not good to actually borrow, because then we have no capacity except taxation and saying we are the lowest taxed city in Canada. We have an affordability crisis everywhere in Canada. So just to say that we can do it, we have to be very cautious and say, should we be able to do this? You know, when we look around, there are jobs available. A lot of the jobs are related directly to the construction trades that are out there, but it doesn't take much more of a different change of federal policy, and those jobs dry up because that CMHC mortgage financing dries up, which means the communities start drying up. So I'm going to be very cautious to say we need to improve debt limit when we aren't sitting in a picture of being as rosy as what's being projected right now. Overall, economically we're not in a great shape for, you know, Canada.
Sorry, is there?
No, I'm just just a bit of a comment through there. So I'm just going to be very cautious about, you know, increasing debt limits and asking for increased debt limits unless we have very specific items we need to increase. So just to say that we need to increase debt limits is concerning if we don't have very specific targeted items to say we're going to do something with that money.
So yeah, through the chair, we would never get debt without a specific project, obviously, so council would be directing us to get debt. It's our job, though, to make sure that we have the capacity so that when we need to get debt, we can go get it, and to have all of those spots in the capital markets for us to go get that. S&P rating is obviously a very important part of that. We are in the market, so we have a fiduciary duty to report and to make sure that we're being fully disclosing our financial situations. We do have lots of policies around what we think for a debt limit and how we can calculate that, and that's in the report, and so we are monitoring that. In terms of, you know, overall expectations of the city, I'm very bullish on the city. I think, you know, we've had a great 10-year run, and I don't see that slowing down. We did discuss with them because they asked us around the churn of immigrants coming into the city, and, you know, while I don't have, data to show it, we are getting a critical mass now of a lot of new cultures and cultural centers that are making people, you know, say, you know what, this city has a place for me. I feel comfortable here. We're adding recreational facilities around cricket pitches and such, where 10 years ago we wouldn't have had that volume of population to support that. Now we're looking at maybe requiring 2, right? And so we're doing our best as a city to make sure that all of our residents feel welcome and want to stay here as long as possible. And I'm personally very bullish on that. So, but again, always uncertainty there. But in terms of that, you know, I think we have some room to grow for debt so we can invest in the city.
Thank you. Councillor, please.
Yeah, just a practical question on sinking funds. If we, over the next 4 years, have 4 different sinking funds for each project that we're doing, do we have to open up 4 accounts at different expense levels, or can we just use one sinking fund where everything goes into it?
So through the chair, that would be a decision we'd have to make at the time. We can investigate that. We definitely wouldn't want to add any undue administrative expense. It would just depend on what we were comfortable with in terms of a policy. I wouldn't say that, you know, all of our new debt would necessarily be a bullet bond with an attached sinking fund.
Right.
Every time we're going to go see new debt, we're going to scan the marketplace and look at all of our options so that we put the lowest cost debt on for us.
Okay, thank you.
problem.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli?
Just reflecting on some of the comments and some of the ways that I've learned that debt would incorporate into our master plans. When we invest in a master plan, whether it be a transportation master plan or something like the catalyst plans, the idea was we would have staged investment over a long-term investment strategy for the needs that meet the most residents that have the most activation for the city. And then when it meets all those buckets, that's when it starts to look like it's a good investment idea, and that's the purpose of putting a plan together instead of just an idea. The catalyst plans that went through the last council, which really took on a bad name in a way, was more so trying to apply that philosophy to our available funds and what we might have to take on for debt to put against a staged plan over a couple decades. And so to weave that through there and align it with our master plans, I think would be the golden effort of planning, realizing what the community needs and the assets there. So trying to incorporate this all together, I think, is like a, well, I've learned for it to be a goal. I hope I'm looking at it the right way. I'm just looking to share and, you know, thinking of comments on how debt might be bad. I agree, but knowing what we have to do and having sound thought put into investments, I think, is what it makes it positive. And that's where we come in to contribute.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I will ask the mover if they wish to close the debate. Yes? No?
I think the proper answer is no, and I don't have anything else to say, correct? Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask the clerk to take the vote.
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
Councillor Slicklees,
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
Jamie Ang,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
Thank you. We will now consider item AFC 25-6, Purchase Card Audit Report. Can I ask the Internal Auditor, Danikar, to please introduce the report?
Good evening, all. This report is to provide the Audit and Finance Committee with the results of the purchasing card or a P-card audit. The objective of this audit was to determine whether employees adhere to the city's policies and procedures regarding P-card use. Based on our testing, we know that most employees adhere to the city's policy and procedures on P-cards. The audit did not find any evidence of fraud. However, audit identified opportunities for control improvement of the P-card program and documented exceptions, 3 of which are significant. P-card transaction logs and receipts duly signed and approved by the supervisor were not available with procurement for 11% of the transaction logs. Supervisory approval, the key control in the process to review and authorize P-card transactions, is not functioning effectively. Policy violations noted during the monthly review performed by procurement branch are followed up with the concerned personnel, but they not always track to closure. There were no P-card new user or refresher training conducted by procurement during the period from January 2023 to June 2024, citing capacity constraints. These observations are not unique to the city. Other municipalities have gone through these audits with similar results. It is common to see more observations during the first audit and notice fewer and fewer observations in subsequent follow-up reviews. With the P-card user training, creating the awareness and providing more guidance in the policy and procedural requirements, we believe it will significantly help addressing most observations noted in the report. Administration has accepted all the recommendations, has already begun correcting or implementing controls that address many of the recommendations. With that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. Can we have a mover for the report? Mr. Ing? Thank you. Any questions from anyone? I do have a question, just specifically on the transaction log. Your report states 11% of the receipts unavailable. Big dollar value, smaller dollar value? Are we talking about, like, you know, a liter of oil, a pack of, you know, something, some wrenches or something, or is it so concerning, or is it not concerning?
So the primary, to answer your question, the primary, we don't have a value attached to the transaction logs. We have around 4,400 logs that should have been submitted for the procurement's inspection, but out of which around 400 logs were not available. But just because it's not available doesn't mean that it is not for business purposes. It is just that we have a very manual process where people sign in the transaction logs, they fill it in a sheet of paper, and then they courier it to the procurement branch. 400 of those logs didn't reach the procurement branch. That's all that means. Yeah.
Okay. Is there room for improvement for getting a system? I know these things, everyone has these things, and there's systems out there, and I use them on this, that I take pictures of the receipts and submit it, versus the manual. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, and through the chair. Yes, there is technology solutions for this. And so as part of, we've accepted all the recommendations. We thank the internal audit for finding these for us. We will be looking at all different options and trying to weigh cost benefit, but I know my background as well. We did implement software that made these things a little bit more smooth. It's just finding the resources to do that.
Don't be afraid to ask.
I won't be.
Thank you very much. Any other further questions on the report on P-cards? Can I have the mover close debate?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to start a vote.
Councillor Mancinelli,
In favor.
Jamie Eng,
In favor.
Councillor Seclise,
In favor.
Mayor Baczynski,
In favor.
and yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much. We will now consider item AFC 25-7 Whistleblower Program Annual Report. Can I ask the internal auditor, Daniker, to please introduce the report?
Thanks again. The whistleblower policy provides a mechanism for employees to report wrongdoing related to the city in a confidential manner where fear of reprisal exists. The whistleblower policy requires the internal auditor to report annually outcomes of complaints received under the policy. This report provides a non-identifying summary and program usage statistics for complaints made using the whistleblower program for years 2023 and 2024 and satisfies the requirement. For 2023 and 2024, 13 whistleblower complaints were received, of which 2 were investigated and none were substantiated. Confidentiality is the cornerstone of this policy. The report will not contain any information regarding any complainant, the subject of the complaint, or any details related to the complaints, including the department it pertains to. The whistleblower program acts as a deterrent to fraud and wrongdoing, fosters transparency, and is also used to identify trends and inform future audits for the internal audit work plan. Internal audit plans to conduct fraud awareness sessions organization-wide in the next audit year, subject to Audit and Finance Committee approval. With that, I'm happy to answer the questions.
Thank you very much. From looking at the numbers that you presented with the number of complaints and the investigations, very good work, especially when finding nothing really as a result of the whistleblower program. I'm sure that the entire investigation process makes a lot of people nervous during that, but it's good to see that there's nothing really substantial out there and no aspects of misdoing. So thank you very much for all your efforts and work. Can I get a mover? Councilor Mancinelli. Is there any questions for the report? Councilor Mancinelli?
All the same, if you had something to finish up, Councillor Beazle, please finish up. I can. Are you sure? Okay. Appreciate the report. Happy to find out 2 investigations and nothing to find that was, wrongdoing. Just thinking of 11 employees, 13 employees that reporting something. Nothing to investigate. Was there education that happened as the reports went to help the employees who believed that they found something that was not proper, in better understanding why it wasn't proper, or just for closing the loop and making sure people went forward with a positive?
Oh, thank you for that question. Where the complainant is not anonymous, we are able to get back to the complainant.
Okay.
But most of the personnel who use the whistleblower channel are anonymous.
Okay.
And that makes it difficult for us to get back to them to tell the resolution.
I get you. I guess that's the whole thing about anonymity. Yeah, I'm just, always worried about an employee being heard. Sometimes people are mistaken in their perceptions or, unknowing. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh. City Manager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just for the benefit of the committee, and I think for the benefit of administration who is listening or watching today's proceedings, there's always good reasons to have a whistleblower policy, and I think it's appropriate to have one. I think it's also appropriate for people to understand that when this was first being promoted by previous council members, care was taken to explain to members that a lot of people may use the whistleblower program to raise complaints that are better suited elsewhere, whether that's HR policy or whatever. And I think what we stressed at the time was that people needed to understand that the city of Regina was not a cesspool of financial mismanagement, because people throw around the term whistleblower, and the way it was being portrayed was there must be some awful things going on and some malfeasance. And I think that making sure we had a program and seeing that there has been, I think, very, very limited transgressions identified speaks volumes, that we do have a professional staff across the corporation. And so I just want to ensure that people understand that it was put together or put forward for good reason. And I think the results are very significant in the sense that we do have professional people working for us, and that that underpinning of something wrong was happening has been clarified. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I couldn't agree with you more, looking at the complaint categories and the numbers, just purely numbers in the categories, very well could be tagged to grievances that aren't part of the report and not part of the process at all. So, kudos to the city staff for doing a good job. All right, if there's no more debate, can I have the mover close debate?
Good to go.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the clerk to call a vote?
Councilor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Jamie Eng.
In favor.
Mayor Bashinsky.
In favor.
And Councilor Saklis.
In favor.
And yourself, Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Most important, our motion carried. Now, motion to adjourn. Mayor's got this one.